Welcome, everybody. My name is Mandy Pullenbauer, and I am one of Vesta's concierge specialists. And my role within the organization is to help to get to know our community on an individual basis, really understand what makes your situation unique, and help you build a roadmap forward, whether that be having conversations with everyone here in this dynamic panel or having conversations with one or two people based on your unique situation. Vesta has been in actually May, it's our 14th year. We started in Massachusetts, in Newton, which is just remarkable. And we've been doing these educational programs for 14 years. And for 6 years, we've been doing this in webinar fashion. And as much as we miss doing the belly to belly meetings, doing it in the webinar way, it allows us to spread our message to more people, which is really what's important to us. We meet here once a month and we talk about a variety of different topics. And tonight, again, we're talking about the gray divorce. The legal disclaimer is that this is a educational presentation and it doesn't create any sort of client professional relationship. You would do that separately. So I believe everyone's going to take a quick minute, 30 seconds to popcorn around to introduce themselves. Let's start with Marty.
Thanks, Mandy. Hi, everyone. I'm Marty Chadwick Balcom. I'm an attorney and divorce mediator with over 27 years experience, which makes me in the 50 plus, the gray category here. And we're labeling it. Sometimes this is called a 50 plus divorce. So after many years as a divorce litigator, I now focus my work exclusively on mediation, collaborative law, and divorce coaching, helping individuals and couples navigate divorce in a more thoughtful, efficient, and less adversarial way. I'm also someone who's been through divorce myself, so I understand not just the legal complexities, but the emotional and the human side of this process. And I really try and center my work around nervous system regulation. In my experience, it really helps when we're making these very difficult decisions. They're not just legal, they're physiological. And so when we're overwhelmed in a stress response, we can think more clearly and communicate more effectively when we have a bit of awareness about our nervous system. I firmly believe that when people are given the right information and the right support, you can move through the divorce with more clarity, control, and less unnecessary conflict. And that is why I'm so thrilled to be part of Vesta and being a founding member of the Central Mass Hub. And I'm glad to be here with you guys tonight. So I will pass it along to Maggie.
Thanks, Marty. And good evening, everyone. Thanks for being on the call today. I'm Maggie Eck. I am a certified divorce lending professional, CDLP, and a mortgage loan officer. I'm passionate about helping people determine what their mortgage loan options are through the divorce process. I've been in mortgages and banking for over 25 years, helped many people go through this process, and there's so many different ways and so many different unique situations. So I love to be a problem solver and help you do that. Along with this team of amazing people, we work together to really help you come up with those solutions and a good plan. So I'm going to pass it over to David.
Thank you, Maggie. And my name is David Meyer. I'm a certified divorce real estate expert. So I'm a realtor that's been specifically trained in the areas of divorce. I've also divorced myself, although mine was probably one of the smoother ones that I've ever seen. I also come from a law enforcement background. So prior to my real estate days, I did 12 years in law enforcement, which really brings me a unique perspective of negotiation, set of skills, and also just a different twist on seeing things and being sympathetic for folks going through the process. Usually I get involved towards the end when it's determined that the house must sell or that is the option. And we do so in a way that if it does end up in court or looking for extra things that may hold up the sale, we make sure that we try to make things go as smooth as possible or as much as they can. And I'll hand things over to Tom.
Thanks, David. Tom Kilgallen. I'm a certified financial planner and a certified divorce financial analyst. I've been a certified financial planner with my own business for about 13 years. A couple of years ago, I got separated myself and realized that even having had the gold standard in financial planning designation for many years, I had no clue about the ins and outs of how things get divvied up or decided in divorce. Got full on into studying for the CDFA and wrote my book, The Divorce Financial Handbook. And I have 3 kids like Marty. Just to echo Marty, like I do think the more certainty and information we can bring to the process, it's going to calm the temperature, move things along faster, and hopefully have less stress. And less important to me, especially I have 3 kids myself, so it's important in all situations, but especially where there's kids involved, to keep things calm and moving forward. So pleasure to be here. I do have bad allergies, so excuse me if you see me sneezing halfway through here. Passing it over to Lisa. We can get to Lisa, I think.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa. I am a certified divorce coach, certified narcissistic abuse recovery and coercive control coach, grief coach. And I typically work in the high complex divorce with a high conflict partner. The cases where you are dealing with coercive control, domestic violence, emotional abuse. Typically, my clients are people that are the people that everyone comes to for every problem. They're successful, they're super intelligent, they're the person that holds everything together at home, at work, in life. And to everybody in the outside world, they look like they've completely got it together. They look like they have the perfect world and perfect life. But they are the people that are slowly crumbling inside due to years of being in an abusive, controlling relationship. And they are at a point where they're ready to get out. I start working with people anywhere from should I stay or should I go place to even post-divorce when they're trying to recover from the divorce process itself and get on with their lives. So we thank you all for being here. We thank you all for hitting start. We thank you all for signing up, because I know we all know how exhausting days can be, especially while you're going through divorce and dealing with all the things that come along with that. Plus you're working, you have kids, and it takes a lot just to plan your schedule around your days sometimes to be here. So we're glad you're here. Take what you need. You can leave the rest. And I always like to start with a little bit of breath work, a little meditative grounding space. Often how I work with my coaching clients in the beginning, just to help you get your nervous system regulated and give yourself a chance to breathe. So we cannot see you. Everybody's cameras are up. We are the only people that you can see. So if you are comfortable closing your eyes in a space that you're in, everyone can just take a breath and let your eyes close. And if you don't want to close them, that is okay too. So as you close your eyes, just start to let yourself start to take some really deep inhales and really deep exhales. They don't need to be perfect breaths. They don't need to be time breaths. Just allowing yourself to inhale and exhale. Letting yourself maybe start to feel really heavy and really grounded in your chair or your seat, or wherever you're sitting. Letting the breath maybe get a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. Maybe you're starting to feel your feet really heavy and grounded into the floor. Letting your body feel nice and heavy and grounded and connected. Maybe allowing the breath to just get a little bit deeper here. Now I'm going to invite you to change your breathing just a little bit. We're going to start to an inhale on the count of 5. So we inhaling for a count of 5. Then we hold our breath in if that feels okay to you for a count of 2. And then exhaling the breath out for a count of 8. We're going to stay with those breaths, those 5 to 8 breaths, for just a minute or so, signaling to our nervous system that it's safe. It's okay. It's enough in this moment. So staying with those 5 to 8 breaths and noticing maybe how your body, the way your body is feeling, is changing a little bit. Now, as we're doing these 5 to 8 breaths, start to notice the temperature of your room. How does the room feel? Is it warm? Is it cool? Is it perfect? Maybe we start to notice sounds you hear outside of your home, outside of your office, outside of your room, other than my voice. Just giving yourself a second to be present, a second to take an exhale, a second to maybe just be for the first time today, maybe the first time this year, maybe ever. So just allowing yourself to sit in this space for just a minute. As you're in this space, start to notice as you're breathing, is your breath feeling tight anywhere? Is it feeling stuck anywhere? And it's okay. We don't judge it. We just allow it to be noticed, allowing where your breath might be holding on a little bit. It might be clenching a little bit, and just allow it to be, giving it a little notice, maybe giving it a little attention. And noticing as you bring your attention to that tighter place, if it gets softer, if it gets tighter, and either way, it's totally okay. There's no right or wrong way. There's no right or wrong answer. And now, just for a moment, I'm going to invite everybody to think of a time or a place or a person where you felt really amazing. You felt really good. You felt like you were your favorite version of yourself. You felt at peace. You felt joy. You felt enough. You felt happy. Just as we imagine this time, place, situation, maybe a person we were with, allow yourself to notice as you're thinking of this how your body feels and where it feels. Does it feel calmer, lighter, happier, warmer? And notice where in your body you're feeling that. And whatever this means to you, whatever that feeling feels like, you just allow it to come into your body, allow it to be there. Maybe you allow it to grow. Maybe you visualize some space around that sensation in that place in your body, and you allow it to grow even more and even bigger if it wishes. Just giving that sensation a minute to be seen, felt, heard, and allowing it to be there. Just holding and leaning into this space for maybe another 30 seconds. And then allowing yourself to go back into those 5 to 8 breaths. Letting the breath get a little deeper now, as bringing it into a more regular breath, whatever feels normal and comfortable for you. And then when you're ready, you can start to move your hands a little, your feet a little, maybe shift side to side in your seat. Roll your shoulders, maybe move your neck, head side to side. Good. Then when you're ready, you can open your eyes if you've had them closed. Come back into the room, come back into your space. Give yourself a minute just to come back and wake up so we don't shock the nervous system. Drink a little water if you have some there with you. You can stand up if you need to stand up, move if you need to move. Yeah, I am going to get started. So tonight we're talking about gray divorce, which I hate the name gray divorce. So divorce over 50. And divorce over 50 in this period of our life does have some different things that can come into play. It can feel a little different than divorce at other times in our life. There's a lot of loss of routine. There can be loss of identity, loss of the future you've planned much of your lifetime. The person you're divorcing, you may have been with much more than half of your lifetime. You may have been the one that initiated the divorce, and you may be one that isn't really excited or happy about the divorce. And wherever we fall in there, sometimes you're both agreeable to the divorce. No matter where you are in that range, divorce typically comes with a lot of grief, especially in a divorce over 50, because you spent so much time together, sometimes decades. You've built homes, families, so many memories, a lifetime of plans, and a lot of future plans. So a lot of grief can come into this time, and that can feel really confusing, especially if you're really mad at the person, especially if you don't really like the person all that much, especially if there was abuse, coercive control, betrayal, cheating, affairs. And then or maybe the one that wanted it, and then you still feel grief, and it can be very confusing. Grief and anger can be in the same place. You can want a divorce and still be sad. You can be happy and sad at the same time. No emotion exclusive of each other. And grief is really anything that you wished could be better, different, or more. Grief is any hope, dream, or expectation you had about your life that didn't come out the way you maybe thought that it would. So allowing yourself is the first step, I think, in going through any divorce, but especially divorce over 50, allowing yourself to feel the emotions, to give yourself permission to have them, and to allow yourself to know it's okay to be happy and sad at the same time. It's okay to feel grief, even if you're so excited to never see this person again in your life. Whatever you're feeling, it's completely okay. And whatever you're feeling is completely normal. I promise you. When you're going through a divorce, especially after 50, you've had a long-term and a long-time attachment to your identity as being part of this married couple, picturing your family in that way. It also often can overlap with empty nesting, with kids moving on, kids going to college, and it can also very often also overlap with your own families, your parents getting older, getting sick and needing care. Along with that, at this point in life comes a lot more financial fears. You've been planning for decades, maybe for retirement, and now your retirement is going to be split into two different pots instead of one pot that you're sharing. Also comes a fear of being alone. This is a person you thought that you were going to grow old with. And for some reason, it also sometimes seems to be a little more shame or embarrassment around divorce at this age. And the grief we've already talked about, but that grief really comes in. I can't say it enough. Another thing I hear a lot is fear of dating at this age. And people always tell me they're not going to date and they're never going to meet anyone else. It's never true. People always do. So I never believe it when they tell me that. And there is a lot of fear dating over 50. You never use a dating app. You haven't been on a date in decades. Maybe even met your spouse in college or high school. So this is all new to you. And that's completely normal too. And it can also actually be a lot of fun. The other piece that comes in a lot is the dynamics of your adult children. When your children are a little younger, there are parenting plans in place. The court helps make a lot of decisions about your children, parenting time, who's paying for what, child support. But with adult children, the dynamics change a lot. The court obviously does not get involved. Then you're left to figure that out and manage that yourself. And that is something I help a lot of my clients with, because even when our children are adults, when divorce happens, they do need support. And there are specific things you can do depending on your situation to make it a lot easier on them and to help your relationship with them and your partner or soon to be ex-partner grow. A lot of the women and men I work with are coming to me from a trauma space where they have been living with control, financial abuse, coercive control, domestic violence, emotional abuse for many years. And with this type of trauma, especially when you finally make a decision to leave or the marriage is ending, they have a lot of physical symptoms. So if you are noticing you're having physical symptoms and you're wondering what the heck is wrong with you, people always think it's menopause. I'm not a doctor. It might be that too. But if you are experiencing brain fog, body aches, just complete exhaustion, this feeling of your brain constantly assessing hypervigilance. These are all also symptoms of trauma and your body's reaction to trauma, which is why when I work with clients through the divorce coaching process, I work in a lot of different ways. We work on the business of your divorce, getting you organized, helping you build the right legal team and divorce team. We work on getting everything from your paperwork organized, your financial paperwork organized, parenting plans if you need them, getting the business of your divorce organized. We also work on the strategy around divorce. Specifically, I work with clients in the coercive control space, and there's a lot of strategy involved there. We work on communications, parenting house, working with your attorneys on strategy, working with your whole team on strategy as needed. And then probably even the most important piece we work on is nervous system regulation and nervous system recovery to make sure you're always showing up where you can make decisions from a clear, grounded space and where you're not activated, where your nervous system isn't coming in to protect you. The person, Marty always says to you, the person in a room who has the most regulated nervous system is the person leading the room. Typically the person that fares the best in the divorce. So I work countless hours a week with my clients, working on nervous system healing and nervous system regulation. Because if you've been in a relationship that's toxic and unhealthy, your body's been doing this a really long time and holding on to this a really long time. And sometimes we feel embarrassed or ashamed, confused. So I'm here to tell you whatever you're feeling in that area also is completely normal. It's normal to feel anxious. It's normal to feel devastated. It's normal to feel scared. It's normal to feel happy. And it's normal to feel all of it. One of the top things people ask me about is finances, which is why we send them to Tom. How do they make the best financial decisions? you won't, when you're making financial decisions, it's so important to have a CDFA you're working with to help you and someone that really understands all the nuances of finances and divorce. And again, it's also so important to work with a coach or therapist or someone who's helping you with nervous system regulation and processing so that you're always making them from a grounded place and not a fear-based place. It helps you also when working with somebody like Tom to really understand your full financial future. What is your full outlook look like? What are your goals? Where are you in life? Where do you want to be? Making sure you have enough money and that you're structured it in a perfect way so you can retire. And I also like to really help people work with when I'm going back to adult children, boundaries around adult children, because as your children become adults, that's another factor that can come into play. They have more of a say. They have also more of an understanding of the dynamics and what's gone on. And sometimes they want to get involved and they want to help. And it's really important to be comfortable with the boundaries you're setting with your children. Another thing that really is important is the home, the marital home, other properties you have. And this is where we send people to Maggie, trying to decide who's going to keep the house. Are you going to keep the house? Are they going to buy you out? Or are you going to do it the other way around? Is the house going to be sold? And if that is the case, where the heck are you going to live? So this is why we have David. Maggie and David often work together to help with the financing, the buying, the selling of the room to make sure you know where you're going, you know what you're buying, you know where you're living. Because if you don't have that, it feels like you're very much in limbo. It feels very destabilizing and it's not good for the nervous system, which you're working hard to help you stabilize. I know when you're coming into a divorce at any time, but especially around the age of 50 or after, it can feel devastating. It can feel overwhelming. It can feel like your life is ending. It's confusing. Everything you thought that was true is changing. Everything that you thought would be is different. And like I said, it's also a time where maybe your kids are moving on or going to college, your parents are getting sick, they're needing more. And I tell people this every time I talk to them on our first call. And I'm not sure they believe me till later, but as much as you feel like everything is an ending right now, it's also a huge beginning. A lot of times 6 months into working with people, I just see the light come back to their eyes. Their posture gets stronger. Their confidence come back like warmth. I can't even explain. It just comes back to their full entire body. The whole energy changes. They're confident. They're happier. They're at peace. And they're standing taller. And even if it doesn't feel like it right now, going through your divorce at this point in your life can be such a huge transition point in the most positive way. It can be such a good turning point. Maybe you're someone that spent the entire first part of your life just trying to survive and just showing up to take care of everyone else. And this gets to be a place in your life where you get to focus on you. And you get to go from surviving to thriving and choose what you want to do, what makes you happy. And you get a new opportunity to meet yourself and learn who you are at this place in your life. So divorce after 50 is never just a legal situation. It's never just a legal transaction. It's emotional, it's physical, and it's financial. And it hits every aspect of your life, but it can be amazing. And it can bring amazing change in amazing ways. So with that, I am going to pass us over to Tom.
Thank you, Lisa. That was awesome. You touched on a lot of great points there. I'm going to pray that I hold it together here and not end up a sneezing mess because of this pollen. But yeah, it's delighted to be here. Yeah, I love especially planning with people that are over age 50 because that's where it gets more intense. Even as a financial planner 10 years ago, I always preferred working with people that are getting closer to retirement age because it's more intensive. It's a lot more involved. There's less room for mistake because when you retire, you don't always have the choice to go back to the same income you made. But there are a lot of opportunities as well that I'm going to touch on here. And I also think there's a lot of positivity to it. I think a lot of you may be going through divorce over age 50 are a little dismayed that you had a nice retirement plan. You knew you were going to retire at 63, 64, whatever. You had it all figured out. Life doesn't always work that way, but I'm going to tell you the upside of this. And I think people overly focus on things are going to be wonderful and rainbow and roses in retirement. the fact of the matter is there's high levels of depression for people in retirement, and there's reasons for that. Number one, lack of fulfillment. Sometimes people, business owners or people that were managers, for example, they had social interaction, they had people depending on them. When people go and retire, they don't have that. They're just, you get told playing golf every day or puttering around the stores. I've always encouraged, apart from divorce and all the rest of it, I've always encouraged people to try and stay active, and if possible, to stay working or in a part-time job even after retirement. It really, number one, does wonders for your financial plan. You'd be amazed, people that even bringing in 20 or 30,000 extra doing something fun, helping out at a golf course or with a charity or a nonprofit. It really makes a big difference for the financial plan. But as well as that, people are staying active, they're staying focused, and depression in retirement is real, and you want to avoid that, trust me. There's a lot of opportunities here as well. After you've turned 59 and a half, you don't have the same restrictions about taking out 401ks and IRAs without penalties. Maggie will probably talk to you about reverse mortgages are now available for people over a certain age that you wouldn't have when you're younger. And then we have Social Security kicks in, and a lot of people have pensions as well. So you can have a Social Security income, you can have a pension income, and still be working, bringing in multiple sources of income at the same time. And these are opportunities, you access to money or liquidity that you didn't always have when you were younger. So plenty of positives here to talk about. I'm sure you guys will be asking about Social Security. I'm not going to go heavy into that right now, but as questions come up, I'll give my 2 cents on that. Social Security is a big factor. The spousal benefit is a big factor for people in divorce. If you've been married more than 10 years, you can avail of the higher of your own benefit or half of your ex-spouse's benefit, whichever is higher. So that's something else to consider as well. That's a big positive as well. I don't want to dominate the conversation here. I'm going to focus you guys a little bit on the household side of things and the real estate side, which is your number one asset for many people in divorce. And I'm going to kick you guys over to Maggie and David here for a little bit just to talk about the considerations that are important for people over 50 when it comes to their real estate asset.
Thanks, Tom. Yes, I agree that the house is often one of the biggest assets for any of us. And so going through divorce, it's often one of the top things that people are worried about. There's a statistic that 70% of divorces involve real estate. And for loan officers like myself, I'm a certified divorce lending professional. If 70% of divorces involve real estate, there's only 1% of us loan officers that are actually certified in divorce. It's definitely something I'm passionate about. So whether it's me that you're working with or another mortgage loan officer, having someone who's CDLP is a benefit. And our main focus really is looking at it because there's so many different ways to approach. Maybe you're the spouse that wants to buy the other one out. Maybe you're the spouse that's going to be moving on and purchasing. Maybe you're both going to be selling the property and purchasing. And that's something David can talk about as well. After 50, and as we all get older, and I'm very gray, as we're getting older, there's sometimes what I like to call like your house rich and maybe cash poor. Some people put it, but really, or you just don't want to disrupt some longer term assets. But different ways to look at if you are buying someone else out, how do we tap into that equity? Things that come up a lot are, gosh, my current rates were low. And so chances are you had a chance to refinance during the 2020, 2021 years. And a lot of people don't want to disrupt that rate. That's something that comes up a lot in my role. And I put in the chat my contact information because I'm happy to do like a 30-minute consultation with anyone. But the things that we talk about are like, maybe it's worth us exploring what's called an assumable mortgage. So if you've had those chances of refinancing, your rate's low, you want to keep that rate, we could explore together if your lender might allow you to assume that mortgage. There's a lot that's involved in that, and I go over that with people. And what that means is you're taking over the loan at the current terms, current terms, but the other person is coming off of it. But you have to be able to afford that yourself, the new loan. So we'll go through and make sure that you can do that as an option. Another thing we touch on is there are lending options that are specific for seniors. So in Massachusetts specifically, as long as you're 60 years or older, there's the home equity conversion mortgages, which Tom had mentioned, a reverse mortgage. I know sometimes that scares people. Oh, I don't want to do a reverse mortgage. And as a banker, I'm a banker at heart because I was in banking for 25 years. And yeah, we see reverse mortgages sometimes as a last resort, but honestly, it's a really great tool. And it makes sense that it's only for certain ages. It's not the solution for every situation. There's times I would definitely not use a reverse mortgage, and there's other times it's the perfect solution. It's really tailoring it to your situation, talking it through. Someone like Tom, a CDFA, along with me, we will go through all those scenarios. But those are two things that come up a lot, that low interest rate. Also, the maybe I'm on a fixed income, and so a reverse mortgage doesn't have an obligation of payment. And so that's a very attractive reason. When you're now on a fixed income, it might be a way to solve that solution. Some other things that come up when you're later years of divorcing and related to the home is you may have the opposite situation. Maybe it's not that you have a lot of equity. Maybe you've already leveraged your house for renovation or paying off some debt or buying another home, right? There's lots of ways to leverage your equity. And so maybe you've already tapped that out. And so you need a different solution to buying the other person out of the home. And so Tom and I often collaborate on, okay, this person can refinance the first and the second into a new mortgage, but now what does that payment look like? And is that sustainable for them? Do they have other assets to give, like retirement assets to give the spouse that's leaving the property? Right. So we try to come up with some creative solutions, but also try to help you look at what is that new cost going to be? And does that make sense for you in the long term? If you're 50 and you're not yet retired, you've got some time. And Tom's very good at coming up with, okay, maybe year 5, you sell it, but it's okay in the short term, right? So there's not a cookie cutter solution for this. Really, it's tailored to your situation. Using retirement income to qualify and Social Security income. Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't make much, but we can gross up the Social Security income. Maybe you have an IRA that you haven't started using yet, but you're 60. We could set it up for a distribution and use that income to qualify. If you're over 55, but you have the assets, we don't have to take it out as a distribution. We just can look at it that we know it's there. And use what we call asset depletion. So there's lots of different ways to qualify you. Don't be scared if you're on a fixed income and you're like, oh, can I get this done? Conversations with people like me and Tom are what you need to do. And then David, our certified divorce real estate expert, then the solution is that you do need to sell, or if you need to value the home, that's something else too. We bring David in. So David, let me kick it over to you.
Thanks, Maggie. And yeah, a lot of times my involvement, I always like to stress to folks, there's actually a lot of realtors out there who look at divorce as multiple dollar signs, opportunity to get sales and get purchases on both sides. And part of our designation as the CDRE is we actually have a full running business outside of this. So I don't need this sale to move forward. My job is to provide advice that's going to actually be useful and helpful in the best situation going forward. And a lot of times it may not involve actually selling the house. It may not be practical to sell the house, or maybe if the home's been owned for a long time, the condition might be in a state where it's going to impact what is even something that everyone can walk away with. And that's where I can come in and be a resource to testify if needed, or to bring this up to both sides saying, hey, realistically, we're not able to move forward in this scenario. It is not the goal to sell it unless we absolutely have to. And then at the same time, I am heavily involved with the lenders, with Tom, seeing what other things are going to come into play in these scenarios too. Also with this particular topic, if you've owned the home for some time, and depending on how the values have been, you may have a lot of equity in that home, and we may have to make sure that capital gains is accounted for as well. Or depending on the timing of the divorce, maybe capital gains isn't factored in, but that's a Tom or a Maggie question, or even Marty as well, depending on the situation. Any realtor is not going to be in the legal lane of this situation, but we know where to pump the brakes and make sure we check things before moving forward, because you can cause a lot more problems by starting the sale prematurely and without doing your homework. So I think that's about all I got on the home sale side for these situations here. Again, we heavily rely on the rest of the team for these and generally get called in once all other options have been exhausted.
Yeah, and David and I work together. Then, if you do need to end up selling, we also look at what are your options for purchasing. And so, if you're going to sell, sometimes it's a nice clean slate. You've got the sale proceeds, it's divided whatever way was determined in an equitable way. And you both can go on and make maybe a new purchase yourself. So we'd look at that number together at what you're pre-approved for a new purchase as well. And Tom, anything else you want to add?
I was multitasking there on one of the questions. The question and answers. Sorry, quick pitch here on the Q&A function in Zoom. Please pop your questions in there. We'd love to see them. It's a little quiet tonight, but more questions the better. Maggie, I'm sorry about that. I was multitasking.
Oh, no, you're
Did you
fine.
want me to chime in on a certain factor?
No, just if you had anything else to add in there. I know David touched on an interesting thing though in terms of capital gains, because for us too, we do help you understand that if you are the one who's buying the house from your spouse, you are taking on that original purchase price, so that original capital gain time
Right.
frame. And Tom and I can help you know when, because there's a certain rule that if you've, oh my gosh, Tom, help me with the rule. Or Marty. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 of the last 5 years living there, right, to avail of there's a capital gain exemption of $250K per person, but you have to have lived in the house 2 of the last 5 years. Maggie, you're bringing up a very good point. If you get left with the house and you end up selling it, you want to know if you're going to have a capital gain down the road. Are you the one going to be stuck with that? So there's different tax benefits. There could be accrued tax losses that you want to get in divorce. That's an actual asset. The capital gains on the house is really important. A big thing that we look at as CDFAs is not just what assets you get, but what are those assets worth after taxes. So a lot of times people will try and tell you, oh, I'll give you 100,000 in the CDs and you take 100,000 in the 401ks. That's not a good deal for you because you're going to pay a lot of taxes on those 401ks when you take them out. So we're trying to level the playing field and let you know what you're going to get after taxes, not just before taxes.
Yeah, that's the same with Tom and I will often calculate. Again, people who are really trying to hang on to that 2.75 or 3.25 rate, right, that they got. But when we look at it and we look at the tax equivalent, the after tax cost for the payment. So if you've got that 3% rate, and that mortgage interest over the year versus the mortgage interest on, if we did a new refinance and you had to take extra money to buy out your spouse, now your current rate's maybe 6.5%, right? So that new additional mortgage interest, though, you're able to deduct that, and you're most likely deducting that as a single person or a head of household, which is a different than when you were joint. So that after tax calculation is another thing that we always want to make sure you're comparing, so that you're comparing the right situations with that tax piece. It might make sense if Tom and David, if anything else you guys want to share, otherwise we can turn it over to Marty.
See if there's anything else major here. I think Marty's going to talk a little bit about long-term marriages and how that impacts alimony, I'm guessing. So that'll relate to our estate planning considerations as well. Protecting assets for kids become increasingly important. So we partner with a lot of estate planners in that regards to figure that out. Life insurance gets a little trickier, trying to get insurance after a certain age. So that is a factor, but we have specialists that we can talk to for certain situations as well. In our network, all of us here on the team network with all these other estate planners, insurance people, all these various professionals. We network with them constantly. So if we're not the experts in any one field, we can find you the people that are. Yeah, I think we'll pass it over to Marty, who's going to have a lot of information for us here.
Thank you guys. Everyone has been phenomenal and offered so much. And one of the things I just want to highlight is that doing this work, particularly in divorces like these, requires a team. And it's one of the reasons I love being part of Vesta. And actually, I really love the mediation piece because it really allows us to be team led. It's much more complex. Just a little bit on the statistics as I was researching for this. In 1990, fewer than 1 in 10 divorces involved somebody over age 50. So today, it is more than 1 in 3. And nearly half of those divorces are ending a second or third marriage. So we're seeing more and more divorces over 50. A lot of them are second or third marriages, but we're still dealing with long-term marriages where people have been together getting divorced. An interesting fact is that women initiate over 60% of what they call gray divorces. So just a little fun factoid as we're thinking about it, the landscape has absolutely changed. So as you've heard from all of our incredible experts tonight, when people over 50 divorce, the legal conversations from our perspective, both as an attorney and for myself as a mediator, it shifts dramatically. So when the kids are grown or nearly grown, we're not necessarily talking about custody and child support as we would in cases where the kids were little. We're really focusing on what we've been talking about is asset division and then support, or as we talk term in Massachusetts, alimony. And just the caveat that I know Mandy said it at the beginning, I am an attorney. I'm licensed to practice in the state of Massachusetts, even though I'm a divorce mediator, I'm still a licensed practicing attorney. But anything that I share with you today, one is not legal advice, but two, I can only talk about Massachusetts. So I know there's some folks here from other states, and unfortunately, I can't answer other states' questions. So everything I'm talking about here is Massachusetts related. So why is this so important over age 50? I think one of the reasons is because, as you've heard, we just have less time to recover and rebuild financially. If you're getting divorced in your mid to early 30s, you have a little bit more time to rebuild than you do when you're getting divorced in your 50s and 60s and beyond. We're actually seeing some folks in their 70s getting divorced. As you said, when the kids are no longer there, the script is somewhat flipping. And we are looking at the kids are part of it. And I think this is actually this middle piece. And I'm going to talk about the specifics of alimony and asset division in a moment. But I just want to acknowledge this piece of it that the kids are not part of the agreement typically. And when I say that to folks, it kind of hits a little bit like our kids are very important to us. And of course they are, but they're not considered legally. In Massachusetts, we only consider children up to age 18 around parenting plans. But then when we consider the issue of support, it can only go from age 18 to 23. So I know many people find that they have adult children, maybe 24 or 25 living at home or when they're whatever age, and they're trying to manage that financially. They're trying to support their kids and then telling their kids they're getting divorced. So when we talk about them not being included in the legal piece, that's what we're talking about. Not that it's not important, not that they're not part of your family. It's just a different dynamic when we're trying to think about that. So I just put that as a caveat. So let's talk a little bit about the concept around asset division. In Massachusetts is what we call an equitable jurisdiction, not an equal jurisdiction, not an equal jurisdiction. So what that means is when the court is considering a division of marital property, it's based on what is considered fair. And there's a whole list of factors that are included, such as length of the marriage, the contributions of each spouse. And that's important because it's not just financial contributions, it's contributions to keeping the home, raising children. We have to look at the emotional labor as well as the financial contributions. We look at the age of both parties. We look at the health of both parties. And we're also considering the future earning capacity of both parties. So when we're talking about longer term marriages, which many of over 50 divorces are, the starting point is close to 50-50, but the longer the marriage, the more we may see a disproportionate split to anywhere, probably, I don't see a lot. I haven't seen a lot or more than 55-45. Sometimes it could inch up a little bit higher, but when we're looking at a disproportionate split of a marital asset, it probably is going to be somewhere between 50 to 55% or 50 to 45%. So, what's typically a marital asset that we're talking about? You've heard both Tom and Maggie and David talk about it. The biggest is likely the marital home, which is going to have equity. And we're going to work with financial advisors, CDLPs, and CDREs, all helping us figure out how we're going to deal with the home. We have to look at your retirement accounts, the 401ks, the 403bs, IRAs, pensions. What are the investment accounts? Some cases have a business. So, we're going to have to consider that. And there may be second homes or inherited property, which that can get a bit complicated. And I'm not sure that we'll have time to fully dive into inheritances and trusts. So then the piece I want to move to next is alimony. And this, also called spousal support, is much more common in longer term marriages. So alimony is support paid by the higher earning spouse who has an ability to pay to a lower earning spouse who has a need for support. So when we're looking at alimony in Massachusetts, it's the length of the marriage. So anything over 20 years is considered as a special treatment. Like there might be an indefinite order of alimony. There's a caveat, which I will share in a moment. Anything between 12, I think, to 15 or 12 to 19 years is medium term. And then we have a shorter term marriage. So there's a formula that's going to determine how long alimony will run for. And the caveat that I say is that it could be indefinite. However, it is usually to the retirement age of the payor spouse. And retirement age is not when someone says, oh, I'm going to take early retirement at age 58. No, retirement age that we're talking about in context of alimony in the statute is 67. That is retirement age right now. It's a Social Security retirement age. So we're looking at the length of the marriage, the ability to pay, and the need. And so once those three factors are established, what we're trying to figure out is what the actual alimony order would be. And what I will say is there's a lot of discretion. Judges have a lot of discretion if your case was to be decided by a judge. But from a guidelines perspective, what we're looking at is the difference between the two incomes, and we take a percentage of it. So we look at roughly 22 to 28%, and the average is 25.5% that we often use for our calculations. Now, some of you are going to have read some information somewhere that says it's more 32 to 35%, which is what the Alimony Reform Act of 2011, I think it was, actually states. However, we've had a shift in 2019, I believe it was, or maybe it was 17, went to effect of 19. I think it's called the Jobs Act, where alimony is now based on the gross income of the payor. And so that means they are paying the amount, we're basing it on their gross income, but they are actually paying it to you with after tax dollars. The recipient, the person receiving alimony, is not paying tax on it. And that is a shift. So since that shift has happened in Massachusetts, instead of keeping it at the 30 to 35% range, they have adjusted the range down to account for tax implications. So we always run a formula and we really look at what that is going to be regarding alimony. So let's see, I talked about that. So I want to go back to the cap. So they generally do terminate when the payor reaches retirement age based on the Social Security guidelines. So the payor's ability to keep working past retirement may not be a reason to extend alimony. If you had indefinite alimony, there is a possibility that a judge could order support payments beyond the age of retirement, but that would be at their discretion and lots of specific circumstances to determine that. But again, we're looking at income. And typically when we get into income, we're looking at over 67, likely we're looking at the income of Social Security. Maybe you're already taking now out of your retirement, the pension, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're getting divorced before those things go into payment status, that's an asset that's going to be divided. If you're getting divorced after they're in payment status, like again, I've seen people who are in their 70s getting divorced. So we may not have as many assets to look at, but we might have to look at a support order because there's a pension or whatever it is. So those cases get a little bit more complicated. So alimony would end at the payor's retirement age. It also can end if the payee, the person receiving the money, he gets remarried or cohabitates with another person and they're sharing living expenses for 3 continuous months or more. So it's important to know if you're getting divorced and thinking about entering into a new relationship, what to consider those things. So just a couple other pieces that I want to share here is the health insurance. It's a really important piece that we always ask questions about because a lot of plans do not allow spouses to stay on after a divorce. And so if you haven't hit Medicare age yet, or you're not Medicare eligible, we really have to think about what that health insurance piece is going to be. So it's a conversation that we always have when I'm doing mediations with folks. What are your healthcare need? What are your health needs? And how are you going to get health insurance? Tom mentioned some of the other pieces around estate planning because especially if you're into a second or third marriage and you're getting divorced, we're really going to be talking about that with you and thinking about the assets and how that's going to be divided. If you've got blended families, all of these things are conversations and considerations that we see in these more over 50 marriages. Long-term care insurance might be something that people are talking about. Again, working with our professionals, I always like to bring in folks like Tom and Maggie and David to really help with these issues that have lots of layers and complexity. And it's really important to understand what your rights are, what your options are, what your financial liabilities are, and what your possibilities are. So the other piece that I just want to put a little plug in for here is the process. So the process is a choice, and that means you can do it the traditional way, which is a litigated divorce, which right now in Massachusetts, at a best case scenario, I would say is around 2 years. If most divorces were just the courts are very overburdened. I was at a conference the other day last week and listening to the administrative judge. They have in the court system right now in Massachusetts, the family court system, we have 47 vacancies, not just judges, but court personnel, which make our courts run. So the courts are really understaffed right now. And so cases take a long time. And it's just how it works. You can choose to do mediation. You can choose to do collaborative law. You could choose to do a negotiated settlement. Mediation is when you hire someone like myself or another mediator who's a neutral third party and can help the two of you with a team of folks in cases like this. I would always recommend a team as needed to negotiate your divorce and settle it where you guys are in charge and the mediator is facilitating the conversation and helping you draft your agreement. The collaborative law case is the in between where you would both have attorneys, you'll have a coach, and usually a financial neutral, perhaps a CDLP or a CDRE or a divorce coach, whomever is part of that, where you're actively working as a collective with the agreement that you will not go to litigation. And if you do, your whole team has to disband. Your team will not come with you in litigation. And then negotiated settlement is when you both hire attorneys to work with each other. Maybe you bring in a mediator or an arbitrator or conciliator to help you, but you try to keep it out of court. So the process matters, and it can matter again when you've got adult kids and you've got grandkids and you're still involved in each other's lives. How you do it can be just as important as what you end up with. So The legal framework is just part of the container. As you've heard tonight, there's so many other pieces that are really important and should be considered. So this decision is a big decision.
Thanks, everybody, for being with us
Yeah.
tonight. This was a robust conversation, as always. And thank you so much for donating your time to do these presentations for our community. It makes a difference.